6th graders. We're ready to take another page on notes today. And this is a little bit more vocabulary. So remember last time we talked about equation vocabulary. And remember, we're in our unit on equations. And so we talked about words like what does an equation mean, and what does expression mean, and term, and operator, and variable, and coefficient, and constant. And so you've worked with those vocabulary words over the past couple of days. Today we're going to look at a different set of, I guess you could quote unquote call it vocabulary words. But today our topic is, this is kind of a long title, writing, verbal, and algebraic expressions and equations. So that for me fit pretty much the entire title line. Now let's really look at what we're talking about here. So we're going to be writing things. Verbal is just a fancy way of saying words. So we're going to be using words today. Algebraic is just another word for symbols. So when we talk about algebra, we're talking about representing things with symbols. And then, of course, you know what expressions are and equations are. Remember, expressions do not have an equal sign, and equations do have an equal sign. And so we're going to be looking at still equations and expressions, but we're going to be writing them out in words and writing them using symbols. Now, for the rest of your page, I want you to split it into 4 equal sections. So you're going to take the entire page, cut it in half, and then we're going to take the rest of the page and we're going to cut it in half crossways. And so we're going to look at some specific vocabulary words that would help us to write out math problems with words and with symbols. All right, and so without further ado, let's talk about addition words. So at the top box, we're going to call this addition. Then we'll talk about subtraction. Then we're going to talk about multiplication. Then we're going to talk about division. All right, and so if you can think, and if you were in class with me, I would just have you yell them out, but think about some words that you know stand for addition or mean addition words. There's lots of them. We're just going to list some of them out. Let me zoom in on just this box for just a second. All right, so some words that mean addition. The word sum, that's a fancy word for addition. The word plus. The word plus means addition. The word increase. Increase. The word more. If you have more of something, more than this, more than that, then you're adding. Greater than. And there's more. Those are going to be probably the biggest ones that you're going to see. Maybe even added to. I'm not going to write down add or addition because, I mean, that is in the word, but those words also mean addition. And so let's look at a couple of examples. So you might be asked to look at so this is a verbal sentence. You might be asked to write out in algebra the sum of 2 and a number. All right, so the sum of 2 and a number. And so this is the verbal sentence, and you would then be asked to write it in algebra. I shouldn't have wrote it. That looks like a minus sign. Let's do a colon. Can we do that? 2 dots. There we go. My top dot's just a little big because it was a minus sign. All right, so here's how you'd write that. The sum of 2 and a number. A number just means we don't know. So remember, we use a variable there. And so we're going to write, well, sum, I'm going to underline that. That means addition. And so I'm going to take 2 and I'm going to add it to some number. You could pick any variable. I'm going to pick X for this one, but you could pick any letter. And so this would be the algebraic way of writing this sentence. So we need to be able to read sentences and then write out the sentence. Now we also need to be able to go the other way. All right, so we need to be able to look at an algebraic sentence and we need to be able to write it in words. And so what if I have the algebraic sentence m plus 8? So what if I saw something like that? So then in words, I could write it a bunch of different ways, actually. I could say the sum of m and 8. I could say m increased by 8. I could say 8 more than m. I could say m and then 8 greater than that. Lots of different ways to say it. I could say something as simple as m plus 8 in words, right? So we're going to choose one of those. Maybe you choose your most favorite. I'm going to say a number. And you could even say m, a number m. We don't know what number m is, but it's some number. A number m increased by 8. And so that means to add. So these words right here are going to be super important. When you see those words, you know you're indicating addition. All right, let's move on to some subtraction words. So subtraction has its own set of vocabulary. If you think of some words that mean subtraction, difference. The word decreased. Take away, less than, subtracted from, and you could just say minus, right? So lots of different words. Fewer would be another one. We could come up with lots of words that would mean subtraction. But again, these are going to be sort of the ones that you sort of are focused on. And I want you to circle the word than and from, and I want you to put a little arrow next to it. And I'm going to tell you why in just a second. These two words right here are really special. We call them switch words. These are switch. S-W-I-T-C-H words. These words that are circled here. And we're going to talk about what we mean by that when we do an example. So you might have a sentence that reads something like this. The difference between 2 and y. Difference between 2 and y. And you would, in algebraic form, so this is verbal form again, in algebraic form, you would write 2 and y, but difference is the subtraction word. So you would just put them in the order you see them and put a subtraction symbol between them. That's algebraic. That's symbolic form. Algebraic form. Now, you might see, and I'm going to write another sentence, you might see 7 less than a number. All right, and so let's talk about this a second. So I told you a second ago to make sure that you circle the word than and from. Those are what we call switch words. Because think about what this means. This is 7 less than a number. Does that mean 7 minus something? Does it mean you're starting with 7 and then taking a number away? No, this says 7 less than. That word than, when you see it, circle it. You're going to switch the order of this because what we need to see here is a number and then you're taking away 7. If it's 7 less than something, it's the 7 that's getting subtracted. So, no, and I could use anything for a number. I'm going to use n. So if you see the word than, what comes first should go last, and what's last should come first. That's why we call these a switch word, because we need to put that around, switch that around in order to make it make sense. The word from does the same thing. So if you had said 7 subtracted from a number, what is it that's being subtracted? 7 subtracted from a number would still be n minus 7. Those two words, when you see them, you have to switch the order in which you see it. All right, so let's do an example that's backwards. Let's just say 3 minus h. And in words, I could say this a lot of different ways. I could say the difference between 3 and a number. I could say 3 decreased by h. I could say 3 take away h. I could say, now if I say less than, I have to say h less than 3. I have to switch it. I have to go backwards. Same thing. I could say h subtracted from 3. Switch words. I could say 3 minus h. So I'm just going to pick one. let's say decrease. So 3 decreased by a number h, or I'm just going to put h. All right, so there is our subtraction words. Again, put you a cloud around those, especially the switch words. Keep those in mind as you practice with subtraction. All right, 2 more words. Multiplication. Of course, the fancy word for multiplication is product. Product. Another multiplication word is, of course, multiply. I guess we could write that down. Times, if we see the word times. Also words like twice. Now, twice is particularly times 2. Also, you could say triple. If you triple something, that's times 3. We're going to leave it at that. And also words that mean multiplication could be something like squared. And remember, that is an exponent. And cubed. Those are exponents, which mean multiplication, but those are those fancy words as well. So for multiplication, we might see something like this sentence. We might say the product of 3 and y. And so that means to multiply. Product means multiply. And remember, we can write numbers right next to letters to indicate multiplication. You don't even need a multiplication symbol in there. You also might see something like this. Let's throw in the word is. So what if it says 10 times x is 100? Now, so far we've only written expressions, right? None of these so far have had any equal signs in them. But we could throw an equal sign in there just as easy, just by putting the word is. The word is means equals. When you see the word is, it means something is equal. So when I write this, I'm going to say 10 times x and then equals 100. Anytime you see the word is, you're going to put an equal sign. So that's an equation. And then, of course, we can go backwards, right? So we could say, what if I have something that looks like this? If I have 4 and then g. That's multiplication. So you could say something as simple as 4 times g. 4 times a number g. And also, let's do one with an exponent. So what if I said n with a 3? You could say n to the 3rd power, or you could say n cubed. Or if it's a 3, it's cubed. Or if it's a 2, it's squared. And so those are important multiplication words. So put you a cloud around those. You're going to need those. And then division, last but not least. So division, the fancy word is quotient. U-O-T-I-E-N-T, quotient. Also divided by. Divided by. You could say split. If something gets split, it would be division. You could also say something like half. Now, if you half something, you're specifically dividing it by 2. You could also say third. If you third something, you're dividing it by 3. That's as far as we'll go with that. But those types of words, 4th, 5th. All right. And so remember, there's also a couple different ways to write division. So what if your sentence says the quotient of z and 5. Now, whatever comes first is going to, of course, come first. So you could write this in one of 2 ways. You could write this as z divided by 5 because it's a quotient, or you could write it as a fraction, z over 5. Either way. And then let's do one with maybe an is. So you could say divide 10 by c is 5. And so in this case, we would say, okay, divide 10 by c. So 10 over c, and that is 5. Can you think of what c would be equal to? What would you divide 10 by to get 5? Has to be 2, right? You don't have to figure that out, but this is how we would write that. All right. And so just keep in mind, again, that word is. Oh, we got to go the other way. So what if you see something that looks like p and the division symbol and then 7? You could say that in a bunch of different ways. You could say the quotient of p and 7. You could say p divided by 7. And of course, it would be the same thing if you saw P over 7 this way. Just keep in mind, whatever comes first or whatever on the top is going to come first in your sentence, right? And so those are some of the division words. So what you're going to practice over the next couple days is using these words that we have now highlighted to write sentences, either verbal sentences with words or mathematical sentences with symbols, in order to translate between words and symbols. Email me if you need help or have questions.